At 3 a.m. on May 2, 2026, Spirit Airlines told passengers not to come to the airport, not later that day, not next week. Immediately, flights vanished from departure boards. Ticket counters closed. Thousands of employees discovered they no longer had jobs. And one of America's largest airlines effectively stopped existing overnight. For many travelers, the reaction was simple: good riddance. Because Spirit Airlines was one of the most hated airlines in America. Passengers complained about the seats, the baggage fees, the customer service, the endless list of extra charges. For years, the bright yellow airline became the punchline of travel jokes across the internet. But think about who actually paid the price when it disappeared. A family that couldn't afford the Delta fare. A student trying to get home for the holidays. Someone crossing the country for a funeral with 4 days' notice. For those people, Spirit wasn't a punchline. It was the only option. But here's the strange thing. In the months after Spirit disappeared, airline analysts became worried. Not because Spirit's planes were gone, not because another airline had gone bankrupt, but because Spirit's most important product wasn't cheap flights, it wasn't baggage fees, and it wasn't yellow airplanes. Spirit's real product was fear. Fear inside airline boardrooms. Fear that if Spirit entered a route, everybody else's prices would have to come down. And for years, millions of Americans benefited from that fear, even if they never flew Spirit once. And now that it's gone, the airline industry is about to find out what happens when the airline everyone hated disappears. Most people remember Spirit for one thing: cheap tickets, sometimes unbelievably cheap tickets. Flights that cost $250 on a major airline could suddenly appear for $89 on Spirit, sometimes even less. Of course, there was a catch. Spirit charged extra for almost everything: checked bags, carry-on, seat selection, food, drinks, priority boarding. Some airlines charge you to print your boarding pass. Spirit charged you to bring a bag onto the plane you already paid to board. The airline stripped away nearly every service passengers expected and sold the flight itself at rock-bottom prices. People hated the experience. At least that's what they said. Because despite all the complaints, millions of passengers kept booking tickets. Year after year, flight after flight. By the mid-2020s, Spirit had become one of the largest ultra-low-cost airlines in America. At Fort Lauderdale, one of its largest hubs, Spirit wasn't just another airline, it was the largest airline at the airport, carrying more passengers than Delta, more than American, more than United. And that wasn't because passengers loved Spirit. It was because Spirit had discovered something the rest of the industry feared. Imagine you're an airline executive who operate a route between two cities. Tickets normally sell for $250. Business is stable. Everything is working. Then Spirit arrives. Suddenly, passengers can book seats for $89, maybe $79, sometimes even lower. Now you have a problem. Because even travelers who would never fly Spirit are looking at those prices. And once they do, your $250 ticket starts looking very expensive. So what happens? You lower your fares. Your competitors lower theirs. Everybody starts reacting to the pressure Spirit created. Researchers eventually gave this phenomenon a name: the Spirit effect. And once you understand it, Spirit Airlines starts looking completely different. Because Spirit wasn't just selling cheap tickets. It was forcing every other airline in America to think about cheap tickets. The effect was measurable. When Spirit entered routes, competitors often responded almost immediately. A traveler who once had only $250 options might suddenly see fares under $100. Not because the major airlines became generous, because Spirit forced them to compete. That was the airline's hidden power. But here's what nobody in the industry wanted to say out loud. Again and again, studies found that when ultra-low-cost carriers like Spirit entered a market, average ticket prices often fell. Not just on Spirit, across competing airlines. The rise of basic economy fares across major carriers wasn't innovation, it was a response. The low-cost carriers had proven there was enormous demand for cheaper tickets, and the major airlines had no choice but to adapt. Spirit wasn't just participating in the market, it was changing the market. May 2nd, 2026. That pressure disappeared overnight. The collapse didn't happen because of one single mistake. For years, Spirit had been facing mounting problems. Engine issues grounded aircraft. Losses piled up. A proposed merger with JetBlue was blocked. Costs continued rising while fares remained low. Eventually, the math stopped working. Then came the final blow. Overnight, America lost one of its largest low-cost airlines. Thousands of jobs vanished. Aircraft worth billions of dollars were suddenly sitting idle. and the force that had spent years pushing fares lower was gone. But while passengers were processing the news, something else was happening. The race had already begun. JetBlue announced new routes. Airlines began studying abandoned gates. Aircraft were reassigned. Schedules were adjusted. Millions of former Spirit passengers suddenly became customers up for grabs. American wanted them. Delta wanted them. United wanted them. Frontier wanted them. Because overnight, one of the industry's largest pools of budget travelers was suddenly available, and nobody wanted a competitor to capture them first. The moment Spirit disappeared, the industry started moving into the gap. One airline disappears, another takes its place, except competition doesn't work like that, and almost immediately signs began appearing. According to analyses of routes previously served by Spirit, average fares on some routes increased significantly after the airline exited. In some cases, prices jumped by roughly 23%. 23%, that's $60 more per ticket every flight. Not because airplanes suddenly became more expensive, not because airports became more expensive, but because one of the industry's biggest sources of pricing pressure was gone, and nowhere was that pressure felt more than in Fort Lauderdale. Before the shutdown, Spirit carried more than a quarter of all passengers passing through the airport, not one of the largest shares. The largest share. When an airline that size disappears, it doesn't leave a hole. It leaves a crater, and while airlines rush to fill it, not every route would be affected equally. Major cities would likely see competitors move in. Smaller cities faced a different reality. On some routes, Spirit had been the only ultra-low-cost option. Those communities may still have flights, but they may not have the same prices. And for many travelers, that's what matters most. A family planning a summer vacation. A student trying to get home for the holidays. Someone rushing across the country for a wedding, a funeral, or a family emergency. A $60 increase in airfare isn't just a statistic. For some people, it's the difference between taking the trip and staying home. That's the irony of Spirit Airlines. The airline became famous for what people hated about it: the fees, the cramped seats, the frustrating experience. But those things may have distracted people from what Spirit was actually doing. Keeping pressure on the rest of the industry, forcing larger airlines to compete, preventing fares from drifting even higher. Its planes will fly again. Many already are. Its routes will be taken over. Its gates will be reassigned. And eventually, Spirit Airlines itself will become just another name in aviation history. But the irony is that the airline everyone hated may have spent years quietly saving millions of people money, not because they flew Spirit, but because Spirit was there, forcing everyone else to compete. And over the next few years, every plane ticket sold in America will help answer the same question. Was Spirit really the airline passengers wanted gone? Or just the one they never noticed was protecting them? Many passengers may only realize the answer now that it's gone.